On this episode of Narcissist Apocalypse, we talk with an abuse survivor named Megan. And Megan was in a relationship with a smear campaigning abuser. It's a story of isolation, physical abuse, putdowns, using children as weapons, and post-separation abuse. Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and with me today we have Megan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And if you want to be a guest like Megan is today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Top of the page, there's a button that says guest form. When you click on that button, it takes you to our guest form page, and there you can read all of our instructions and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button, and please do send it in the format that we ask for. And today you are going to hear Megan's story and a content warning for this episode as we do discuss physical abuse in this episode. So that is a content warning for everyone. And today you're going to hear Megan's story. And this story is on the shorter end of the stories that we do tell, but it's very compact and there's a lot of information in here. I know Megan's story is going to help a lot of people recognizing abuse that is going on, but also when it comes to the post-separation abuse, especially if you have a child, there will be a lot of little nitty-gritty nuance things in there to really validate your experience. So I really can't thank Megan enough for being here. So now I'm going to get out of my way and your way. Megan, the floor is now yours.
I wanted to talk about my experience of being in a relationship with my ex-husband. It's kind of interesting because you don't really see somebody for what they are until, a while after. And then by then it's kind of in too deep. You've gone too far. You have a wedding planned. And then eventually you have a child with them. And I think probably out of all of the regrets that I have, it was probably having a child, because that ties you together to such a degree that you don't ever really truly get rid of them.
So before we get to the person that your story is about, what was your upbringing like?
I grew up in a mixed race family with very traditional gender roles, probably because of my ethnic background, and I have Indian roots. And my mom was a homemaker, and my dad was the main kind of breadwinner. And so I grew up surrounded by a lot of love from my parents, but with the idea that, there are gender roles in society, and those gender roles being that, the man makes the money and he's the provider, the head of the family, and the woman plays like a supportive role in the family. And I think that affected a lot of my experiences with my ex-husband, because I viewed our relationship through that same prism, even though I probably shouldn't have done at the time. And I think in hindsight, the reason that I tolerated what I tolerated was because, I was kind of encouraged to compromise, and that it is, the woman's role in the relationship to compromise and hold the whole thing together, basically. Although, so I had doubtlessly a very happy childhood, but it was, it changed, it created a lot of the perceptions now that I feel are wrong.
And what were you like as a child and as a teenager?
I was always very keen to please, actually. I was a teacher's pet. I skipped a class in school. I did exams early. I was a straight A student. And I think I have this streak in me that like says, if you try hard enough, it will work. So if you try hard enough, it will work out. If you just want it enough, it will happen. And again, looking back, those are all the things that kept me in my marriage because growing up in a fairly conservative background and with the belief that if you want, you will succeed. I had this fixation that if I just try hard enough and work hard enough, that he will change or it will be okay. Or if I just compromise more, everything is going to be all right. It was that complete inability to accept failure that in hindsight is what kind of got us to where we are today in a way.
And as far as what you wanted from the world after school and things, did you have specific dreams that you wanted? Like, where did you see yourself, your future? And did you have any other belief systems or value systems that you lived by at that time?
So what I knew for sure is that I don't want to be a housewife, a homemaker. I didn't want that because I couldn't stand the idea of not being financially independent. I couldn't stand the idea of asking anyone for money or anyone dictating how I spend my money. And so I was always career oriented. My mom always wanted us to be financially independent, in part because of her maybe own experiences in her marriage. But I was not brought up to be subservient. Um, so I wanted to be a lawyer. I am a lawyer. I became a lawyer. And so I was extremely driven because there was always that pressure of how much finance had been put into my education. There was always a pressure to succeed and exceed. And so the belief system that I grew up with was that you should be able to have it all. So it's quite messed up, actually, because on the one hand, I was seeing these traditional gender roles and, being told that it is women who should compromise, but at the same time being encouraged to be making money and having a career and etc.
And did you have relationships previous to this, and what were they like? And did that influence the relationship that you eventually got into that we're going to be talking about today?
The relationships that I had before. So because I spent so much of my teenage years kind of poring over books and studying, I didn't really have proper kind of boyfriend girlfriend relationships until I was about 16 or 17. And even then they were quite at a very innocent level. So I went to university kind of not really having had a sense of a proper relationship. Yeah, I'd had a couple of boyfriends in high school, but things were never really serious with them. And before I met my ex-husband, I dated another guy from university for 3 years. I can't say there was anything wrong with him. We broke up because he went to study abroad and it was just not feasible at that age. No one wants to be tied down in like a long distance relationship at the age of 18. And he was kind of wanting to go out and party. And so that was all fine. I don't think that any of them kind of put me through any trauma or, that then that then led to me falling in love with my ex-husband.
So eventually you do meet the person that this story is about. So walk us through the initial meeting, how it happened, and take us from there.
So kind of against that backdrop of my upbringing and the fact that, in my culture, people often get married pretty early. My my mom had told me that, well, by the age of 25, you should aim to be married because that is a good time to get married. And I was like, okay. So I met my ex-husband at a house party, and he was 7 years older than me. So I was 20 and he was 27. And I was still studying, and he already was an adult. He had a job, and all of that was obviously very attractive. He was very good looking and he was very charming. He was smiley. He had a lot of charisma, and he was just a guy that everybody liked. So he was just very, very likable. And so we got together, and then at the time, he was still kind of hung up over his ex. And so things were a bit difficult. It wasn't that serious. I wanted a commitment from him, but he was still texting her or whatever. And then eventually, the commitment did happen. And in those, I can't say that he love bombed me in those initial stages, which is kind of the classic thing that happens. But things were all right. Although what I did notice, and I think what should have been a warning sign back then, is that he really knew how to hold a grudge. And he also didn't get along with any of his family members. So he always argued with his mom, always argued with his dad, always argued with all of his sisters. So he had like 2 sisters. And he was in this constant stream of like negativity towards them. And everybody had done him wrong. His parents hadn't given him enough career guidance, which is why he was where he was. And his dad was a drinker, and his parents were divorced, and his dad didn't give him enough money when he moved abroad to study, although his dad did fund his whole education. And so it was always kind of like somebody else is to blame for all my grievances, and I have done nothing wrong. Like life has just done me hard,
Did you have empathy for what he was saying at the time?
Yes, because he could tell a good sob story. And some of the things he told me, that his mom would like make him stand on frozen peas or on salt, like with his knees, to punish him. Or, those were all horrible things. Or that he would tell him that he was good for nothing, never going to succeed in school, and that he was terrible at it, and that he was a failure. And his mom always made him go to his dad when his parents separated and say, you need to give us some money. But then equally, she would belittle him for begging from his dad. And now he belittles me for begging when I tell him to pay child maintenance. He's like, here you are begging again. It's just like a repetition of this cycle of abuse, which we'll come on to.
So, trauma is breeding trauma here, which is breeding, he's got unresolved trauma from his childhood, which is going to eventually wreak havoc on your life. So after these initial meeting that you had with him and this whole, getting a commitment part of the relationship from him, how long is that period? And I guess what happens after, your commitment occurs?
So I think it took about 6 months to get a commitment from him. And we dated. Then we moved in together eventually. So we dated for 4 years, 3 years, sorry. And then we moved in together. Then we got engaged a year later. And then we got married a few months later.
So those 3 years before you moved in together, was life normal?
It was normal, and sometimes it wasn't. So I found that I would always be the one apologizing for everything. So he was not one for apologies. And I found that I was always kind of making that first step after an argument to say, okay, well, let's make up or whatever, forget about it. And he wasn't really one to take a step back and to apologize. And I think that was, in hindsight, a red flag as well. And also, a lot of the times when we had arguments, he would kind of turn them around on me and be like, well, I acted that way because you did this or you provoked me. And there was one time, I mean, he started smoking quite a bit of pot eventually. Um, and, everybody smokes pot at university, probably. And everybody is kind of a bit naughty with it, but he took it to the next level. And I think he had like a proper addiction. Um, and so eventually, kind of, it became obvious that he was smoking more and more. And he wasn't really physically violent with me for a while. But the first time that he was, so I threatened to flush it down the toilet, and he grabbed my neck, pushed me against a wall, and said, like, I will punch you if you throw away my pot. Um, and and even then, when, later in the aftermath, I was like, what you did was just not okay. He was like, well, you shouldn't have provoked me. Like, I'm an adult. I can deal with my own pot issues. And it's not your business. And then the cultural aspect came in because I'd introduced him to my parents before this had happened. We were engaged and we were about to get married, and then like everybody was invited. And then just the like cultural shame of calling the whole thing off was too much. It just wasn't an option. It wasn't an option. We had 300 people at our wedding. All my relatives knew, all my conservative relatives. And I was like, okay, maybe this was a one-off and it's not going to happen again, and we've talked about it now. And even though I'm not sure he thinks what he did was wrong, he actually denied that the whole thing ever happened. I was thinking that maybe it's going to be all right.
And what did your friends think of him before you got married? Were they fans of him? Because you said he was charismatic.
So they were fans of the charisma, but they weren't fans of the fact that they thought he wasn't very intelligent, and they thought that I was settling. But from my perspective, he was unlike my dad because he was interested in also doing homemaking things. Like, he liked cooking, and it seemed like he didn't want the gender role separation. And especially in a man from the same background as me, which is what he was, I thought that this was an achievement on my part to find a man from my culture who gets me, but who is equally a feminist and not a misogynist, or so I thought. So my friends liked him, but they also thought he wasn't very intelligent.
Hi, everyone. I know many of you are always looking for new podcasts to binge, and I binged the podcast Nobody Should Believe Me, and I loved it. It is a groundbreaking investigative true crime podcast about Munchausen by proxy, hosted by author Andrea Dunlop, who has been a guest on our show before. And all of the 8 episodes of season 1 are out now, and they are ready to binge. And it is consistently on the Apple True Crime charts. And guess what? Season 2 is airing now, and I am very excited about it. And it is covering a shocking new Munchausen by proxy case, talking to survivors, and going deeper into Andrea's story too. So if you need a new podcast, I'll be listening to Nobody Should Believe Me, and I think you'll enjoy it too. Nobody Should Believe Me is available on all podcast apps. So what was, I guess, the next escalation point in your relationship?
So before we got married, I had told him that, look, I have to do well in my career. I want to be a lawyer. I want to finish my training. I want to get promoted. I want to be kept on. And I said to him, I don't really have the time to do the 9 to 5 and, cook meals every day. That's not going to be a possibility because I really want to focus on my career because it's just starting out. And I can't tell my seniors that, I'm going home because I need to go make dinner. That's just not how it works very early on in the legal industry. You cancel plans, you do what it takes. And I thought that that was clear. And eventually, as our kind of life together started to progress, he used to say, why am I always cooking? You have to be home at 5 today to cook. And I would say, you, uh, we've discussed this. I just don't have time. If you want, like, I'll pay my fair share and I'll pay for takeaways, but I can't make you fresh meals every day with 3 types of vegetables or whatever it is that you want. Because not only did I have to prepare meals every day, but they had to contain certain ingredients. So it couldn't be just meat, but it had to have veg in it. And he couldn't eat the same thing 2 days in a row. It had to be switched up. Um, and he eventually, things really broke down when he started arguing with me. He started recording our fights, and he started sending around the videos to our friends, to our family, to his relatives, to my parents. Um, he started gathering all this evidence on me. So he would kind of rile me up and rile me up. And then he would be like, uh, look, and by the time I was seeing red, I was like a bull. He would be like, oh, you're crazy. Look at her. Look how she's insulting me. Look how, she disrespects me. And he kept saying that you have no respect for me. And you're lucky I cook. And it would be rare for you to find a man. Like, I'd like to see you find one who will help you do the dishes or who will do any cleaning. In fact, he didn't ever do any cleaning, but we'll come on to that. So he was always saying how I should be grateful. And then later on, when our daughter was born, he was like, you should be grateful that I wash her bottles. I'd like to see you try to find somebody who washes baby bottles in our community, for example. One of the escalations was when we had an argument about something and he didn't want me to sleep in the marital bed. And so he literally kicked me. He kicked me off the bed. So as I was getting on it, he was lying on it. He just used his feet to just kick me off it. And he wiped the toilet seat with my clothes. He kind of threatened to throw away my stuff down the toilet and flush it down. And those were just the kinds of escalations that took place.
So, what are the reactions from your friends and family after everything is sent to them? And how does it feel to have everyone involved in your relationship? And then how are you dealing with everything?
So, my most embarrassing factor was the fact that he was sending this to my parents because they had no idea that things were not going well in our marriage. And it was the first that they heard of it when he phoned them up and he said, this is what she's done, and she doesn't cook, and she doesn't clean, and she's a brat, and she works, and also look at her, like, disrespecting me, you know. So first I had to try and smooth things over with them. As it comes, so when it comes to my friends, so our friends eventually got involved in trying to salvage our relationship because he told them so much. And I got an email from a friend with a long list of things, our mutual friend, of what was wrong with me. So things that I had done that were selfish. So one of those things for which I got a lot of stick was the fact that when we went to a wedding together of his friend, I hadn't helped organize that wedding. And he had embarrassed me publicly. He had thrown my makeup artist out of the hotel, told her to leave, had a fight in front of her with me because I hadn't helped organize his friend's wedding. So that was a selfish thing I did, apparently, according to the email, that somehow justified his abuse. Another thing I was told from, again, a person of the same cultural background is that I should be grateful because most men try to dominate their wives, but he's a stand-up guy. Use the word stand-up guy. And he doesn't try to dominate me. So, I mean, what can my problem possibly be? I just need to suck it up. And that, quite frankly, me poking fun in the WhatsApp chat group at him occasionally was completely inappropriate. although this same person was sending us videos of his own wife kind of snoring, which I'm not sure she wanted everyone to see. But anyway, so it was that kind of misogyny just kind of all around me, which made me feel like I was going nuts and that maybe something was wrong with me because I was being told, that I need to contribute to the household, which I was happy to do. I was happy to pay for cleaners. I was happy to pay for someone to, come and help us cook, but I just couldn't do it myself. And I had made that clear because I was, trying to build a life for myself, remembering that I was 7 years younger than him. And in the end, I started to feel like maybe something is wrong with me because all our friends, barring two, had turned against me. And now we're divorced, none of them speak to me because I have not voiced my sob story, so to speak, that he has managed to get into everyone's head. I had my personal friends who were not his friends, who were not mutual friends, called up by him and then calling me, being like, I can't believe that you've done all these things. He said X, Y, and Z. And then when I had set them straight about what was going on, they would tell me he is so convincing, he's so persuasive, that they were starting to think that I was a bit of an asshole, quite frankly. And there was only one girl who heard my story. And how this happened was that one time after our daughter was born, he raised his fist at me and I was holding her and he was threatening to punch me because he was mad at something. And I called the police because I was scared because she was like 2 months old at the time. And as soon as I called the police, he went out and he told everybody that I had lied to them, that I had overreacted, embarrassed him, humiliated him, including this one girl. And she was the only one actually had the guts to meet up with me and hear my side of things. And after she had heard it, she didn't really speak to him again after that properly because she gave me a chance to explain. Whereas all the rest of them, I didn't get any chances to explain my position. And he was so convincing. He convinced my grandma. He convinced my aunt. He called up everybody he knew. Everybody.
So, this was the aftermath of everything that occurred with this smearing. It happened during it, but it also in the aftermath as well. But in between, eventually, after you did get married, you did have children. And when you had children with this person, things did take a turn and get worse. So I guess take us through how the children affected everything and the weaponization, I guess, of children when it comes to abusive relationships.
Yeah. So we had our daughter in 2018. And I have to say that in the time between when we had our daughter and I was pregnant, things were more or less stable-ish. That was probably because I was taking it easier at work. I was coming home on time. I had been more keen than usual to please because now we had a child on the way. And so things got better because I was keen to please. And I was making my kind of 3-vegetable meal plus a salad. And I think he seemed content with that. So then we had our daughter. And obviously, as people who have had children, particularly women, will know, it is a tough time. It's a tough time because you are kind of their primary carer. They depend on you for nourishment. Your own body has gone through a bunch of changes. You're not really yourself. There's hormones. And again, because I am not a believer in failure, I was very keen to breastfeed my child, and it wasn't working out. And while I was struggling with all of that, he then called me a drama queen because I was so self-centered in all of this. So I was focusing on my own thing and not realizing that, I'm giving everyone around me a tough time because of my breastfeeding drama, like calling consultants and lactation consultants and all of that. So he yelled at me in front of my parents. And again, I was always keen to keep the disagreements in the house, so not to spread it around to other people. But he had no qualms fighting with me in public. And he fought with me in front of my parents, in front of our friends, even when I said it's a red line for me, because I don't like that kind of public outburst, humiliation, whatever you want to call it. So we had our daughter. I was struggling, was yelling at me. And I was very keen to get some help with my daughter after she was born. And because I needed that help and I was asking him for it, I wanted my parents to help. He said to me that you're not right in the head because you're depressed. And I said, I'm not depressed. I am fine. But the issue is that you are not helping. You have said to my face, it's a mother's job to look after the child. And now you're accusing me of being depressed because I want some level of help. So things really escalated then because I started to decide that I don't want to raise my child in this kind of household. We were arguing every day. The house was a mess. He had threatened to call the police on the cleaner if she came because he said that it's my job, all of this, and that I'm spoiled for wanting all this help around me. And so then I decided that I would get a divorce. But I had been deciding that for a long time. So it took me actually about 1.5 years to properly go through with it. I, kept filing. Then he was complaining to friends, calling my parents, trying to convince them to speak to me, to put me back in my place, to, make up, etc. And in that time, he started to use our daughter as a tool. So, for example, he said things to me like, if you don't apologize to my friend for not helping with X and Y, then you can't go traveling with our child. I'll take the passports away. I'll make sure she doesn't leave the country. He started slowly to say things like, oh, well, if you want me to agree to this kindergarten, what are you going to do for me? And it was just getting unbearable. And there were constant arguments, and it resulted in her startling. So because she was very small, if she heard yelling, she would startle. And then I would say, don't yell in front of her, don't swear in front of her. And it would just rile him up even more. So we had a 3-bedroom house. I moved out and he stayed with our daughter. I moved into a hotel for a year, and he stayed in our 3-bedroom house on his own. Another thing he started doing was trying to make me feel more and more insecure. So he would say things like, look at all our friends. They cope so well with all their children, and you're just incompetent. You constantly need this support network around you. But look at X and Y. She's doing so well. He'd say things like, you will never find another man. I have like a certain skin condition. He would make fun of that as well. And all the things that I had told him in confidence about my childhood, for instance, elements of abuse that occurred in my childhood, not from my parents, I will say, he then used against me. So all of those deepest, darkest secrets to try and kind of really, really shake me. And so I moved out and we started court proceedings for the children. And again, he is so convincing. Even in the courtroom, he would say things like, I want to see my child because I want to help her with homework. And I want to be involved in school life. So he got his extra day. But where we are currently is that he doesn't do any homework with her because he wants to make me mad, because he wants to put it on me. But it's narcissistic because it's selfish. And what he doesn't realize is that when we have to do all that homework in one go because she's been with him, he's not done it, it's due tomorrow now, and it's up to me to do it in one go, she gets tired. She wakes up late for school. She is late to school. And all of these kinds of things is just, I think a narcissist will always put themselves first. There's other elements of things that he does, such as steal school uniforms so I have to buy more because he couldn't financially control me. And, thank the Lord for that, because if a narcissist has financial control over you and you are not financially independent, I feel that they will do everything they can to run you into the ground. So he will withhold child maintenance. He will make me buy new school uniforms by stealing mine and not returning them. He will not pick her up from school so that I have to leave meetings and just run to school, and try to punish me in every possible way. And it's still going on. And I just don't think that there is an end to this, quite frankly. When you have a child with a narcissist, there is no end. And it's been 2.5 years since we divorced, and it's still going.
So where are you in the proceedings when it comes to, I guess, getting an official custody agreement, or are you constantly being put back into court after that agreement has been done?
We have the agreement. So he has her once in the middle of the week and then every other weekend. But his claim to that once in the middle of the school week was so that he could do homework and participate in school life and pick her up from school. But those things are not happening. And so once the ink is dry on those papers, it just shows that all of this was not because of consideration for our child. It was about kind of personal win. Because when you can't win in another way, you try to win with something else.
In non-related stuff with children, are there other forms of post-separation abuse that are happening?
There aren't, because he got arrested for sending abusive messages. So I think he spent about 48 hours in jail. And I think that taught him. But before, yes, like personal attacks, yeah.
So how does one get arrested for messages? What did those say?
Those called me a patchy cunt. And I have a skin condition called vitiligo, which is what Michael Jackson had, which is where you get white patches on your skin. And there is something called the Malicious Communications Act, which if you send someone grossly offensive or inappropriate messages, can result in you getting arrested. But I'm not talking about Canadian or US law right now.
So I guess right now you're still in this dealing with this post-separation stuff that's going on with your child and how he's able to manipulate situations or, get his satisfaction of trying to win, quote unquote win, because that's what he has in his mind. But where are you when it comes to healing, how you are, raising your child and dealing with your ex and how they feel about this person, even at a very young age? And I guess, obviously, you have a lot of ties to your friends that are completely gone now. But when it comes to your parents, was that able to be reconciled, like the smearing that went on with them and them being on your side again, or was that still an issue?
It is still an issue. So none of our mutual friends speak to me still. And I don't think that they ever will, to be honest. They have unfollowed me on social media. As when it comes to our daughter, she loves him, but I don't know if that will always be the case as she gets older and starts to see these patterns of having to, go in inappropriate school uniform because, all of hers are with dad and he's not giving them back. Or, the fact that he doesn't want to pay for any after school activities, doesn't want to pay child maintenance, um, unless forced to, uh, by child services. And I don't know if eventually she will realize, but for me, I'm just trying to keep it above board for now. So not insult him to her. And when it comes to him, I sometimes do send him the odd message trying to get to him, just trying to say, you not doing homework with her this weekend is nothing off my, is no skin off my nose. It is hurting her because she is tired and she's late to school and she can't, stay focused for so long, do it all in one go. So you need to do something. And this uniform thing, it's hot in the summer. I don't want her to wear trainers every day. I'm sure you don't either. Please give me back my whatever summer shoes or summer dress. Um, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I think he is so angry, and I don't think that is ever going to change, ever.
And when it comes to losing your marriage and the grief of that, and then maybe the relief of that marriage being over, you still have this loss of your friend group. And I guess a big part of your life. So that's, what you assumed was your support group. So how do you kind of wrap your head around that? And I guess when it comes to healing, I guess, where are you in that process and the grieving aspect of everything?
I think I'm more relieved than grieving. I have been promoted twice in my profession since all these troubles started. I think I just focused myself on work and getting ahead and doing the best that I can for our daughter with only one income, because he's not about to pay anything. And so I think in reality, she kept me strong. I haven't had therapy as such for this, but I am looking into that. Having said that, though, I think the fear of failure for my daughter is the biggest therapy to just pull my socks up and get on with it.
And if you had any words of wisdom for everyone listening, what would they be?
Before you bring a child into this mix, into what is already a messed up, abusive relationship, think a million times over, because you will never get rid of them unless they magically decide that they don't want nothing to do with their child. And for your child's sake, I hope that is the case. I hope they just decide they want nothing to do with them. Unless that's the case, you will be stuck. And I don't know if all narcissists are so vengeful, but my ex-husband doesn't let go of grudges. It's not something that they do. I don't know if narcissists always do, but they're just always out for revenge. So just remember.
Well, thank you, Megan, for being a guest on our show and sharing your story and your experience. I know it's going to help a lot of people. So a big thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you once again, Megan, for being here. And if you want to be a guest like Megan was today, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Top of the page, there's a button that says guest form. When you click on that button, it takes you to our guest form page. There you can read all of our instructions and either send us an email at narcissistapocalypse@gmail.com or fill out our guest form and press the submit button. And please do send it in the format that we ask for. And if you are someone that needs support, we at narcissistapocalypse.com have a support group. So at narcissistapocalypse.com, top of the page, you'll see a support group button. And when you click on that button, it takes you to our very own safe social network. And inside, you'll see that we have Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. We also have forum boards for you to post on to get the validation that you need from survivors just like you. And you are there as well to give validation to survivors just like you too. It's a wonderful group of people on there. You can share your experiences and make friends as well. It's just a great group of people in our support group. So if you need support, join our support group today. And if you need even more support, please do visit our friends at domesticshelters.org. At domesticshelters.org, they have articles and resources to help you make sense of what you are dealing with. They have every phone number, email address, and every web address for shelters and agencies, no matter how big or small the town you're in. Domesticshelters.org has it there. It is a wonderful free resource and a wonderful organization. So if you need extra support, please do go to domesticshelters.org. And we here at Narcissist Apocalypse have a new friend to the show, and that is an organization called Shelter Movers, which you can reach at sheltermovers.com. And Shelter Movers helps survivors of domestic violence transition to a better and safer life. And they are currently just a Canadian company, but they're looking to be spreading into the United States. It's a volunteer organization, and it's a donor-supported charitable organization as well. And what they do is they help coordinate moves for people who are getting out of domestic violence. It's an interesting part of the domestic violence escape process and getting you to safety, getting all of your things out of your home. They set up storage for you for all of your belongings, and they can even do this for your pets and your livestock as well. And it's just a wonderful organization. So if you need help from them or you just want to donate them, please go to sheltermovers.com. It's a wonderful organization, so check them out if you want to know more. And that is it for our show today. So for myself and Megan, we hope you have a good night.